Samson, the strong man who fell 400 years after the Exodus, and 40 of them spent in chains. That's how long Israel had been under the boot of the Philistines when this story opens. Not because their enemies were unstoppable, but because Israel had wandered from God, and Scripture says he let them fall into Philistine hands as a consequence. Into that stretch of national exhaustion, a private, quieter kind of sorrow was also playing out in the hill country of Zorah. An angel shows up uninvited. A man named Manoah lived there, from the tribe of Dan. His wife is never named in the text. History remembers her only as the wife of Manoah, and she carried a grief many women of her time understood all too well. She could not have children. Judges 13 states it plainly, twice, for emphasis. She was barren. Then, without warning, everything changed. The angel of the Lord appeared to her, not to her husband, not in a dream, but to her directly, mid-errand, mid-ordinary life. His message had no preamble. She would conceive a son. But this wasn't ordinary good news. The angel attached conditions, and they weren't small ones. While pregnant, she was to avoid wine, strong drink, and anything ritually unclean. And the child himself would carry a lifelong mark. No razor was ever to touch his head. He was to be a Nazirite, someone set apart entirely for God, from the very moment of conception. And his life's assignment was stated outright. He would begin Israel's rescue from Philistine rule. She ran to tell her husband. Manoah's reaction wasn't doubt, it was responsibility. He didn't ask, "Is this real?" He asked God to send the messenger back so he could learn how to raise this child correctly. That prayer was answered, though not the way he expected. The angel returned to the wife again, alone, while she was out in the field. She fetched Manoah, and this time he got to ask his questions directly. The angel simply repeated the same instructions. Nothing new, no shortcuts. Manoah, wanting to honor his guest, offered to prepare a meal. The angel declined the meal, but suggested a burnt offering to the Lord instead. Then Manoah asked the visitor's name, hoping to give credit once the promise came true. The answer he got was unsettling in its mystery. The name was beyond understanding, too wonderful for a human to grasp. What happened next left no room for doubt about who they'd been talking to. As the offering burned on a rock altar, the angel rose upward in the flame itself and vanished into the sky. Manoah and his wife hit the ground, terrified. In that era, people believed seeing God meant death. Manoah was convinced they were about to die. His wife talked him down with simple logic. If God intended to kill them, he wouldn't have accepted their sacrifice, wouldn't have shown them all of this, wouldn't have made them a promise in the first place. Her reasoning held. They lived. The pregnancy proceeded exactly as promised, and a son was born. They named him Samson. A boy marked by something bigger than himself. The text notes something happening beneath the surface of ordinary childhood. The Spirit of the Lord began to stir him while he lived in the region between Zorah and Eshtaol. Not full-blown miracles yet, just the early movement of something that was being built toward a purpose. That purpose collided head-on with Samson's personal life the moment he became a man. He traveled to Timnah, Philistine territory, and saw a woman he wanted to marry. He didn't ask his parents' opinion. He told them what to arrange. They pushed back, understandably. Why marry an enemy, a Philistine, when there were plenty of Israelite women available? Samson's answer was blunt. She's the one I want. Get her. What his parents couldn't see, and what the narrator makes a point of telling us, was that this stubborn romantic choice was, underneath it, part of a larger design. God was using Samson's attraction to a Philistine woman to manufacture a confrontation with Israel's occupiers. The lion, the honey, and a secret. Kept on the road to Timnah, Walking through the vineyards, a young lion charged Samson. In an instant, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him, and Samson tore the animal apart barehanded, the way someone might tear apart a young goat. He told no one, not even his parents, who were apparently walking nearby. Later, returning for the wedding, curiosity pulled him back to the lion's carcass. He found bees had colonized it and produced honey inside. Technically, touching a corpse made a Nazirite ceremonially unclean. But Samson scooped the honey out anyway, ate it, and handed some to his parents without telling them where it came from. A small detail, but it's the first crack in the discipline his vow required. A riddle, a betrayal, and a score to settle. At the wedding feast, 30 Philistine groomsmen were assigned to Samson as companions. He turned the 7-day CE, liberation, into a bet. Solve his riddle. Out of the eater came something to eat. Out of the strong came something sweet. And he'd give each of them fine clothing. Fail, and they'd owe him the same. 3 days in, they were stumped. So they turned to Samson's new bride and threatened to burn her and her father's household alive unless she extracted the answer. She wept and pressured Samson relentlessly for the rest of the feast until, worn down, he told her. She immediately passed it to the Philistine men, who delivered the answer to Samson just before the deadline. Samson knew instantly he'd been betrayed. Furious, the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him again, and he went to Ashkelon, killed 30 men, and used their clothing to pay off the bet he technically still owed. Then he stormed home, leaving his bride behind. Her father, assuming the marriage was over, gave her to one of the groomsmen instead. Foxes, fire, and an escalating war. Some time later, Samson cooled off and went back for his wife, gift in hand, only to learn she'd been given away. Her father offered him her younger sister as a consolation prize. Samson's response wasn't diplomatic. He declared himself justified in whatever he did next to the Philistines. What he did was catch 300 foxes, tie them tail to tail in pairs, with a torch fastened between each pair, light the torches, and release them into Philistine grain fields, vineyards, and olive groves. The devastation was total. When the Philistines traced the arson back to Samson and learned why, they retaliated by burning his former wife and her father to death, the very fate they'd once threatened her with themselves. Samson vowed revenge and delivered it, striking the Philistines with what the text calls a great slaughter, then retreating to a cave at the rock of Etam, betrayed by his own people. The Philistines responded by massing an army in Judah and demanding Samson be handed over. Rather than risk war, 3,000 men of Judah went to Samson themselves, not to thank him, but to tie him up and deliver him to the enemy. Samson's only condition was that they promise not to kill him themselves. He'd allow the binding. They led him, bound with new rope, straight into the Philistine camp at Lehi. As the Philistines cheered their apparent victory, the Spirit of the Lord surged through Samson once more. The ropes gave way, like burnt string. He grabbed the nearest weapon he could find, the fresh jawbone of a donkey, and killed 1,000 men with it, alone. Afterward, half dead from thirst, he cried out to God, and a spring opened up from the ground to revive him. He named it En-Hakkore, the spring of the one who called. Gates, Delilah, and the secret that finally came out. Years passed with Samson judging Israel, but his old pattern, desire overriding discipline, kept resurfacing. In Gaza, he spent a night with a prostitute, and the city set an ambush at the gates, planning to kill him at dawn. Samson left at midnight instead, tore the entire city gate, doors, posts, and bar out of the ground, and carried it uphill toward Hebron, roughly 40 miles away, as a statement no one could misread. Then came Delilah in the valley of Sorek, and Samson fell for her, the way he'd fallen for every woman before her, completely and without much caution. The Philistine rulers offered her a fortune, 1,100 pieces of silver from each of 5 lords, to find the source of his strength. 3 times she asked. 3 times he lied. Fresh bowstrings, new rope, weaving his hair into a loom. And 3 times, when she tested the answer by staging a fake attack, it failed to hold him. But she didn't let up. Day after day, she wore him down with accusations that he didn't really love her, until, as the text puts it, his soul was vexed to death. Finally, he broke and told her everything. The Nazirite vow, the uncut hair, the fact that cutting it would strip his strength entirely. This time Delilah knew it was true. She sent for the Philistine lords, lulled Samson to sleep on her lap, and had his hair shaved off. When she triggered the alarm again, Samson woke expecting to shake free like always. He didn't know, the text is explicit about this, that the Lord had already left him. It was never really the hair. The hair was only the visible sign of a covenant he'd finally broken all the way through. Blind, bound, and grinding. Grain in the dark. The Philistines gouged out his eyes, shackled him in bronze, and put him to work grinding grain in the Gaza prison, labor typically reserved for animals. The most feared man in the region was reduced to walking blind circles in the dark. But the text drops in one quiet, easy-to-miss detail. His hair started growing back. Nobody in the prison thought it mattered. It mattered more than anything else in the story. One last prayer. The Philistines threw a massive festival to credit their god Dagon for delivering their enemy. Thousands packed into the temple, all 5 Philistine rulers, plus roughly 3,000 more on the roof. And at some point, drunk on wine and triumph, they had Samson brought out from the prison to be mocked for entertainment. He asked the servant guiding him to let him lean against the temple's 2 central support pillars. "So I can rest," he said. It wasn't rest he was after. Standing there, blind and humiliated in front of the people who'd broken him, Samson prayed his final prayer. One more burst of strength, one last act of justice for his eyes. He set a hand against each pillar and pushed with everything left in him. The roof came down on everyone inside, the Philistine leadership, the crowd, and Samson himself. The text notes, almost as an epitaph, that he killed more people in that single collapse than in his entire 20 years of judging Israel. His family recovered his body and buried him near Zorah, close to where the Spirit had first begun to move in him as a boy, closing the story exactly where it started. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe to further push these videos.